So today, so far, there is only one question. So may I clarify my understanding? I'm sorry, not really understanding. For example, I see an apple on the table. My eyes contact to the apple, which giving eye consciousness. Your eyes do not contact to the apple. When you know apple, it's already the sixth consciousness, not the eye consciousness. Eye consciousness does not know the apple. It only knows the color. So don't be mistaken. We have already explained it. So don't be confused. The eye consciousness does not know any apple. It is the sixth consciousness that brings the idea of apple in. And you may have the idea of apple, but a worm, he may have a very different idea, but he has his mind also. So how you differentiate with the mind consciousness? You already have your karma in it. So that is why when you differentiate something, there is manasikara, attention, and attention already comes with will. And will is what accumulates karma. The definition of karma is the ayuhana, the accumulation of the samskaras based on will formations. So you don't see any apple by mental by eye consciousness. You should be clear about that. You see the apple by mind consciousness. I have tried my best to explain it, but it still seems to be not clear to some. So you cannot see an apple by eye consciousness. We have explained this Shwai only endures a very short moment. Then the mental consciousness puts on together the pictures like a film. Take an example of a film. You have hundreds of thousands of pictures which you put together as a serial. Then you can distinguish exactly what they are doing, why they are doing, what is going on. So what the eye consciousness sees is only color and some vague form, which then mental consciousness puts together on the base of attention and will together with the shin, with the vitarka and vichara, shinsa, which investigate the object. Then you decide about the object. This investigation can take quite few moments. Then you decide about the apple, and then you have the either process, the wholesome mind based on the Khali Zoe, Yonisho Manasikara, or the unwholesome mind based on the Ayonisho Manasikara, the non-reasonable attention to the apple. So what is the reasonable attention to the apple? Not clinging to it, not getting aversion to it if it is not a nice looking apple. And these habits which direct your attention already when it happens and when you decide on the base of your attention are very deep, of liking and disliking. And this is our world. This is the small world of small mind differentiations in which we live. So when we see an object, we already see it based on our sixth consciousness, which includes our likings and dislikings So we don't see objectively, but we see subjectively, according to our karma. And karma is based, I have explained, on the clinging on sensation. Because we cling to sensation, we create the karma. This karma is stored in the form of bijas, the seeds in the consciousness. And according to the seeds, we then make attention. And we make attention on the fleeting impression of the five senses. So please don't get confused. I have explained it already so many times, and it still seems to be not so clear. Okay, any other question? So no questions today at all?
Only one.
So I'm glad the others seem to be clear about what we have discussed. So now, because it seems some of you very worried about the assessment Chenchi, so I have to, according to my agreement with Kate and Ami, I made a decision that by the beginning of April, I will give a course on the, what it is, liberation or something?
Liberation of mind.
Liberation of mind, which you most welcome to watch. And by after that course, which will be take place beginning of April, I will teach every day 3 times. Then you will be given the subjects of the essays and of the oral examinations. By then, you should get at least most of the materials you need for this course. The actual meditation materials I may also provide you in the coming lectures, but for understanding the Vipassana meditation, you need to understand the objects of Vipassana meditation. That's why I have given you a little bit information about the objects. There is no Vipassana meditation without objects. And these objects of Vipassana meditation, they are differentiated by wisdom. If you don't have wisdom, Vipassana is a synonym of wisdom. And what wisdom? The differentiated thing wisdom. Vi means differentiate. Pashyana means seeing. Seeing by wise differentiation. That is the meaning of Vipassana. According to Buddhism, the ultimate realization is based on wisdom, is based on Vipassana. But it can never happen without the samadhi, which brings the unity and equilibrium into the mind. This equilibrium is the necessary condition of wisdom. We may know many things, but this is not a Buddhist wisdom, liberating wisdom. The liberating wisdom is based on equilibrium of the mind. If you don't have equilibrium, you may learn Buddhism, you may get some knowledge, you may get some assessment also, but it will not help you to reduce or remove your suffering. In order to remove and reduce your suffering, you are dependent on the equilibrium of mind. This is what brings wisdom to the mind. So the Buddha never stops repeating the same thing, that only the mind in samadhi can see things as they really are. Now, my job is to introduce you a little bit to the things that are to be seen as they really are. Now, the particular feature of Yogacara is as opposed to later scriptures, or not later scriptures, we don't know, but scriptures like Lankavatara, Ru Lankachin, and so on, which repeatedly emphasize the non-differentiating wisdom. To get the enlightenment of the fully enlightened Buddha, you need definitely to rely on the non-differentiating wisdom. But the Yogacara has a special respect for the Abhidharma tradition as opposed to the some other schools. Actually, the Zen tradition or the Pureland tradition, which is most prevalent in Chinese Buddhism, they have also great respect for the Abhidharma. Xu Yin Lao Heshang said that it is the tragedy of Chinese Buddhism that the scriptures translated by Xuanzang are not studied anymore. I have read that. And some of the early founders of the Chintu traditions, here we are in the Chintu center, they also were great masters of Abhidharma, starting with Hu Yuan. So we need Abhidharma to know the real nature of the objects. Without knowing the real nature of the object, even the Lankavatara, which is the base for the Zen tradition. Everybody knows who studies Zen that what the Bodhidharma taught in China is the Lankavatara Sutra. The Lankavatara Sutra, you read the first chapter, the Buddha's discourse to Ravana, the king of Lanka. He says that the real Dharma is no Dharma, no Dharma. Fei Fa, Fei Fa. This is very often misunderstood. So you cannot rely on differentiation, that is Fa. And you also cannot rely on non-differentiation. Say everything is Kong, everything is Wuxin. This is also wrong. If you do that, you don't know the middle way. So what is the middle way? Actually, the Mahayana tradition, to some extent, of which the Yogacara is a part, developed as a criticism of Sarvastivada, of Ichie Yopu. This is very important to understand. That's why the students of Yogacara, they first study Jishalun. Everybody who studies Yogacara in the old times, they had to study Jishalun for many years with the commentaries, and preferably also with the 7 books of Abhidharma, and with Ta Vibhao Shalun, which is a so with this base, then the Yogacara contribution becomes quite clear. And Yogacara is, now we don't have time to talk about it because it would be too complex. Yogacara is to great extent, same like Madhyamika, is to great extent based on the Sarvastivada and its criticism. Now, the only living tradition of Buddhism today, which is a living tradition how to become an Arahat is Theravada. And Theravada is the only tradition which still has commentaries of the Agamas. They are not extant in the northern tradition. So our understanding of the Agamas is very limited in the northern tradition. But in the southern tradition, you have commentaries of the Agamas, you have the sub-commentaries of the Agamas, and up till today, you have the sub-commentaries of sub-commentaries of sub-commentaries of sub-commentaries, written mostly in Burma. We just preserved this Abhidharma tradition best. Now, because we have this living tradition, so it is very important to compare with this living tradition, and you will be very surprised, myself being a student for this tradition for many, many years, that this tradition actually is very much complementary to the Yogacara. This was my discovery, and that is why I have used a lot of Theravada material for understanding the Yogacara better. Why? In the Yogacara, which has a great respect for Abhidharma, Yogacara is the, we can say, the Mahayana Abhidharma, and very complete Mahayana Abhidharma. It emphasizes that you can read the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra, Jieshan meeting. It emphasizes, just like Lankavatara and just like Theravada, same, just like even all Buddhist tradition, the ultimate reality is Pukasai, is unthinkable. Puka Chito cannot use the mind, deducing mind to understand. You have to understand directly. And in Yogacara, they have the great respect for Abhidharma because you should try to understand directly these phenomena experienced by wisdom in your immediate tradition, in your immediate perception. Now, this is very important. So, and this is very complementary also with finally even what the Zen scriptures teach, with what Lankavatara teach. The suchness I have explained before. In Theravada, you will find in Agamas also. Suchness has two aspects. The aspect of the ultimate reality, which is unspeakable, ungraspable, and the aspect of the relative reality. This aspect of the relative reality, when you become a Buddha, becomes Prishta Labda Jnana, the wisdom after enlightenment. Now, if you study Buddhism, this wisdom after enlightenment is what makes the Buddha, the perfect Buddha, different from the Arahat. It is the wisdom after enlightenment. The Arahat also, he has the non-differentiating wisdom. But his wisdom after enlightenment is limited. This also you will find in the Agamas everywhere. Why? Because seeing difference between samsara and nirvana, he is still subjected to a dualistic tendency. So this dualistic tendency is because of the so-called spontaneous ignorance, according to Lankavatara and so on, Zen scriptures. You have two types of ignorance, which enlightenment has a job to remove. The ignorance based on differentiation. All Buddhas don't have this ignorance based on differentiation. The Buddha disciple, the Buddha for himself, and the Supreme Enlightened Buddha, they all have the wisdom free from differentiation. Nirvikalpa Dhyana, Woof and Piager. If you don't have Woof and Piager, this is explained in Agamas, this is explained in the Poje Polomi scriptures. If you don't have a Woof and Piager, no way to get any enlightenment. But when you get the real understanding of the middle way, which can be only understood by the Woof and Piager, because the object of the middle path, the Eightfold Noble Path, you cannot grasp. If you grasp it, it cannot appear together. Only it can appear together, the Eightfold Noble Path, when you don't grasp the object. You cannot have the right speech, like acting, like livelihood, and at the same time the right mindfulness and right samadhi, and together with letting go and with clarity. While the object is the object to be grasped. Only when the object cannot be grasped, all these 8 causes of the middle path can appear together. When they appear together, your understanding of your experience in the world will change radically. As long as they do not appear together, you will still be bound by your differentiation. When you work on samadhi, you don't see the differentiating wisdom. When you work with differentiating wisdom, you don't get into deep samadhi. Impossible. So you should see this very clearly. And when you have the non-differentiating wisdom, then you start accumulating the Chotage, the wisdom after enlightenment, which appears after enlightenment. The greatness of the Bodhisattva path is precisely the study of the paramis, which are based on actually on the wisdom after enlightenment, which they, as opposed to the disciples, they can use the wisdom after enlightenment even without having realized the direct vision of nirvana, the direct vision of the first truth, the direct vision of the middle path. But they can contemplate, they see what is the job of the arahant, what is the job of the bodhisattva. The job of the bodhisattva is to contemplate the world like the arahat sees it, but that he does not become an arahant. but he contemplates the world with the eyes of an Arahat. Actually, he realizes the eyes of an Arahat only in the 8th stage of the Bodhisattva, which is called Achala, Putung, unmovable stage. He realizes the eyes of the Arahat. Before that, he is working with the eyes of the Arahat, but does not become an Arahat. This is very important to understand. He does not become an Arahat. Why? Because he has a yuan. Every bodhisattva has a yuan, has a vows. There is no bodhisattva without vows. If you want to be a bodhisattva, the first thing to start is a vows. Now, I am teaching here in the Pureland. So the Pureland practice is also based on vows. The practice of Maitri, of friendliness, of compassion, of joy is also based on vows. This is a similarity. Now, you don't need any vows to become an Arahat. Your job is to see things as they really are. So, to see things as they really are, you cannot avoid. So, if you practice Mahayana, you definitely have to learn how the Arahat sees the world. What is the 5 aggregates? What is the 12 bases? What is the 18 elements? What is the dependent origination? What are the 4 noble truths? What are the 22 faculties? When you start learning Buddhism, you cannot jump over it. If you jump over it, you jump over the Buddha's Dharma. Nobody has got enlightened jumping over Buddha's Dharma. It is not possible. Now you are learning Yogacara. So this Buddha's Dharma is the first turning of the law. It is based on the existence of the phenomena and non-existence of the self. What we have explained, Tieshan meeting is a base for the Yogacara. So first, the Buddha has to teach what really is there. He cannot teach immediately what is not there. This is a job of the Pragya Paramita, of the transcendental wisdom. The sutras of transcendental wisdom teach what is not there. And what is not there is any clinging to dualistic perception. That is not there. We have learned that. And that impossibility to cling, or the irrationality to cling to dualistic perception, is explained either by Nagarjuna as emptiness, and by Yogacara it is explained as the suchness of the mind. So the Yogacara, same like Madhyamika, these are actually the only schools of Mahayana sort. No matter what Mahayana you study, it is based on these 2 philosophies. and they are reconciled in many different ways. I'm not going to teach you all. There are many different ways to reconcile the Madhyamika view and the Yogacara view. In Chinese Buddhism you find it, in Tibetan Buddhism you find it, in all Mahayana genuine traditions you have from the very beginning a very strong tendency of reconciliation of the Madhyamika view and the Yogacara view. Even within the Yogacara tradition, you have the reconciliation like Stiramati, Anhui. And within the Madhyamika, you have also the reconciliation. Like the founders of the Tibetan tradition. Shantarakshita, I don't know the Chinese name, and Kamalashila. They brought Buddhism to Tibet. They represent the reconciliation of the Madhyamika view with the Yogacara. So you should be very clear about it. Then, according to the Yogacara, comes the third turning of the wheel, which is to avoid the nihilism. According to modern scholars, if you have the emptiness view, then it is very difficult to avoid being accused of nihilistic view. Actually, what the Buddhism based on agamas, Sarvastivada and so on, do is just accusing the Nagarjuna of nihilistic view. This is also what Theravada teachers do very often, not all. There are many enlightened Theravada teachers who praise Nagarjuna's philosophy also. So this is the complexity of Buddhism, which exists till today and which is very subtle. Later you can learn because you are now interested in Buddhism, but you have to start with the basics. If the basics are not clear, then these subtleties will also not be clear. So I have to teach you, it's my duty now, some basics of the Abhidharma. Now the Abhidharma is the key to Vipassana. Now in Vipassana we will talk about it in the coming lessons if we still find the time. In Vipassana you have two systems of Vipassana. The so-called Kalapa Vipassana, the Vipassana in groups, and Anupada Vipassana, Vipassana in detail, one by one, realizing the nature of all corporeality and the nature of all mentality, one by one. Now, this is in a way the greatness of Buddhism. And this greatness of Buddhism is very much emphasized in the Theravada scriptures. If you read the Milinda Panha, one of the most popular scriptures in Theravada is called Milinda Panha. Nasi Bhikshu, I should know funny. Nasian. Nasian Bhikshu Juan, I should know. So Wen Jin. Nasian Bhikshu, So Wen Jin. This Milinda Panha has 4 translations in Chinese. I was helping some students with writing the PhD on this. 4 different translations. So it must have been very, very popular in China also. They won't translate 4 times. But its popularity with the increasing popularity of Mahayana decreased. Now the Naxian Shuo Jin, So Wen Jing, it's this Naxian Bhikshu. He is being asked by this great Greek Indian ruler, Milinda, what is the contribution of Buddhism? Why I should be impressed by Buddhism? What is the greatness of Buddhism? Very logical answer, very logical question. At that time, already in India, many very wonderful systems of philosophy, Vedanta, Samkhya, which are really great. And also in Greek philosophy, very great systems of thought already there. So he asks, what is the greatness of Buddhism? Now this Naxian Bhikshu, Sanghasena in Pali, he answers, the great ruler, the greatness of the Buddha is to discover in one mind all the different mental factors which make it a mind. Very interesting. Oh, please explain. I want to know. This is very great. Great King, Maharaj. Do you eat curry? Yes, I eat curry every day. And the curry of the king in India especially contains limitless number of different spices, and they used to, according to Indian medicine, used to grind the jewels, also put them in the curry for longevity. So can you, great king, distinguish in your curry all the different spices and different ingredients which are there? That is impossible. Of course I can't do. Similarly, this Buddha, our teacher, has differentiated in one mind. In each and every moment of this one mind, he was able to differentiate all different ingredients, how they appear and how they disappear, what are the causes, and how these causes arise. Oh, this is really great. Please give me some other examples so that I can think about it. Great King, have you been to Ganga Sagar? Yes, I have visited Ganga Sagar in Bengal, where the Ganga river flows into the Bay of Bengal, where the Ganga river becomes like Yangtze in Nanjing. You can hardly see or can't see the other shore. Now, suppose the great king, you are in the boat in the mouth of the Ganga river, and somebody asks you to take the water and differentiate in this cup of water of the river Ganga at its mouth, the different taste of the Yamuna, of Ganga, of Ganga, of the different many rivers which flow into the Ganga, countless rivers. Would you be able to do that? Oh, of course not. This is beyond the possibility of an ordinary human being. And this is precisely what our teacher has done. In one mind, which continues to flow, he was able to distinguish all the different ingredients, their arising, their cessation, their causes and conditions. Oh, Namo Buddhaya. So this is how the greatness of Buddha is explained in early Buddhism. Now the emphasis changes. Why? Because arise many systems of Abhidharma. In Indian history, you will find 22 or 18 different sects. Each had different Abhidharma, different explanation of the agamas. Now, which is right, which is wrong? A big question. How to decide? So, Nagarjuna comes. So, the scriptures of transcendental wisdom appear. You have to go to the essence. Then you can this is precisely what the Buddha teaches. Nagarjuna does not teach anything different from the Buddha. Oh, you have to understand the essence, then you can understand the details. If you only wander your time by analyzing the details and don't understand the essence, which is the non-differentiating wisdom, then you are far from the real meaning of Buddhism. This is what the Transcendental Wisdom Sutras teach. This is what the Daimon Sutra teaches, hearing which the Huineng got his enlightenment. And the Zen tradition is all based on this, on the Lankavatara Sutra taught by the Bodhidharma, emphasizing the non-differentiation. But the non-differentiation, you cannot jump over the real facts of our experience in the world. You cannot jump over it. If you jump over it, then it is not Buddhism. Buddha has taught that through penetrating the worldly experience, you will not be confused about the highest reality. If you don't understand the worldly experience, you are bound to be confused about the highest reality. That's why I have seen myself with my own eyes, people in China, Amitabha very popular. People get some problem and Amitabha, crying and praying to Amitabha to save them. But this is all right, but this is not really what makes Buddhism different from other religions. But it is perfectly all right to cry. It is perfectly all right to have all kinds of emotions, but they have to be purified. This is a job of Buddhism. Now, because I am telling things, so I will tell you some story. In Thailand, when I was in Thailand doing my wandering as a Theravada monk, there was I was in one temple. There was a program in the television with one great practitioner called Mahabua, the disciple of the Achan Mun, one of the most highly respected arahats in modern history. And he is believed to be an arahat by practically all. Now, there are scenes when he's crying. And the people were asking him in the program, how can an Arahat cry? He said, how can an Arahat not cry? I am crying out of gratitude for my teachers. Nothing wrong with crying. The job of Buddhism is to purify our sensations. When the sensations is purified, you can go beyond sensations. When you can go beyond sensations, you can be liberated. Now, no one does it better to show this process of getting liberated, as far as I know, better than the Yogacara. And how? In a very similar way what the Theravada does. But the conclusion is very different. That is why the next topic is the analysis of the materiality, corporeality. Now, Theravada comes to very similar conclusions like Yogacara. The atoms, which are the actually, or the particles, which are the consistent parts of materiality. Actually, practicing Vipassana, you are practicing what? You are practicing on two kinds of kalapas. Kalapas means the, how to say kalapa? Serji and Shinji. So what we are experiencing moment by moment in our worldly experience is Serji. That means the Rupa Kalapa, the conglomerations of materiality, and Minchi, the conglomerations of mentality. This is all we experience moment by moment in our daily life. Now the job of Abhidharma is to break this Serji and Minchi, to understand that in this conglomerations of materiality and conglomerations of mind, which differentiates these conglomerations of materiality, there is not a stable, non-changing base which can be called I. This is a job of Buddhism. And this is in a way also the job of yoga. But yoga comes to a different conclusion than Buddhism. Yoga comes to the conclusion, this shows that there is the pure soul which is beyond all this. But the Buddha comes to the opposite conclusion. This shows that there is no self. Actually, Buddhism also finally adopts the philosophy of yoga, but changes it. Because the wisdom is very flexible. And finally, what we need for liberation is a wisdom. Only wisdom can liberate you, me, and everybody else. The job of religion is to teach people wisdom. Only by wisdom. It is similar in Western religion, Eastern religion. The real meaning of religion is in wisdom. And wisdom is a light. And the founders of religion, their job is to bring the light to the world. Nothing else. Buddha says the same thing. Christ says the same thing. Muhammad says the same thing. Krishna says the same thing. Now, the peculiarity of Buddhism is that this you can be mistaken about this light unless you have analyzed your worldly experience as it really is. So to avoid the violence, the opposite, the job of yoga, the job of Buddhism, the genuine yoga is the practice of non-violence. This is the greatness of the Indian contribution to the world, the philosophy of non-violence. Now, we Buddhists, we believe that the non-violence is presented in most perfect way in the Buddhist teachings because of the dependent origination. Dependent origination is what Buddha has realized under the Bodhi tree. All traditions agree with that. In Hinduism, in Taoism even, you will find the similar ideas like dependent origination, but they are not analyzed in detail. Only Buddhism analyzes in detail all the constituent parts of the corporeality and mentality in the river of existence that we find ourselves in. Even the Greek philosophy also comes to the same conclusion. Our existence is a river flow, and you never go to the same river twice. But Buddhism presents it in the most detailed way, why it is so and how it is so. So this is when you contemplate all this, then study of Buddhism makes sense, not just assessment, but understanding. So of course you will get your assessment, but you have to understand that is your real assessment. So try to read more, to contemplate more of what you are learning. Then your study of Buddhism you will find very, very meaningful. Now another question is cropped out. Venerable, when I practice shamatha, I imagined the object of bodhisattva. However, the image was changing and moving during meditation. What should I do? I imagined the object. Whatever object you read, like Tarshan Chishin Lun and so on, if a bodhisattva appears in your meditation, on whatever it may be, the Zen meditation or the meditation on breath, that bodhisattva is a Mara himself. You have to distinguish between the Mara and the bodhisattva. When you practice meditation, you don't imagine things. Then you can use your imagination to liberate your mind. But if you imagine something and meditate on it, then it is Mara. What is Mara? There are 4 kinds of Mara. You should become very familiar with them. What is the cause of Mara? The clinging. Clinging to what? Clinging to the world, clinging to the five aggregates of existence. This is the cause of Mara. Because of this cause, there is the effect. Another Mara, a good friend. The effect of Mara is a death. Now, the condition of the Mara is the Yama, Tien. If there is no Tien, there is no condition. The Buddha was examined by all these different creations of the God. Which God? The sensual God. Like the Eros in Greece, which is being burned by Shiva. Here the Buddha does not burn, but he sees through. This is a difference. He is unmoved. So he goes beyond Mara. He goes beyond the death, beyond the effect. Having realized the cause, he can go beyond the effect. Not having realized the cause, we cannot go beyond the effect. So this is why I have been teaching you the mental process, to see very clearly how our own consciousness cheats us. We are being cheated every day. That's why we imagine all kinds of things which do not exist at all. And we keep on imagining until the time comes when we can't imagine anymore. We are confronted with the bare facts. Now, the Buddhism is studying these bare facts. When you understand the bare facts, you can penetrate the cause and you can avoid the effect. This is the depths of Buddhism. Not in imagining, but in understanding. All the teachings of the Buddha is to bring the beings to understanding. There is no other course of Buddhism. So please contemplate on this, and study of Buddhism will start making some sense. Otherwise, you keep on imagining something, but this is not a study of Buddhism. The Bodhisattva you imagine is your Mara. If you are meditating. So this is precisely what you were supposed to understand by studying the mental process. What we actually realize through the 5 consciousnesses are the immediate pictures which don't allow us any clear differentiation. The clear differentiation comes from the 6 consciousness. This is a job of the 6 consciousness. Only the sixth consciousness can meditate. The I consciousness has no way to meditate because its object will never be clear. It just reflects like the mirror, the picture which appears in the sensitivity of your eye due to your attention. But in that attention already, because I have explained, the attention comes together with will. There is already contained your karma, because the karma means accumulation of the formations. That is se. Se accumulates. And accumulates where? In Yogacara it is called alaya. In Theravada it is called bhavanga. And that is the consciousness with which we die and with which we are reborn. And that is a consciousness which explains the continuity. Without that consciousness, you cannot explain continuity. Then Buddhism would be the philosophy of annihilation, nihilism. But Buddhism is the philosophy of the middle way. The mind which pays attention is the momentary mind. This momentary mind is based on your attention. With which the mental process starts. So you have learned that the five consciousnesses, sensual consciousness, I consciousness, and so on, is the Xian Liang. The Isha, the mental consciousness, is not Xian Liang. It is not the direct experience of the object. In this direct experience of the object, there is not yet a duality. That is why the Yogacara is based on the mind which creates everything. It creates a duality, it creates a world, it creates the content of our experience, it creates the good, it creates the bad. It is nowhere but in the mind itself. It creates a Pureland, it creates the hell. Everything is created by the mind. Now, the job of Buddhism is to teach you how to use that mind in order to purify your sensation. When you purify your sensation, you can go beyond the clinging mind. And the clinging mind is the cause of the Mara. And we cling to what? We cling to our sensations. Because we cling to our sensations, we accumulate karma with which we are already born. And we keep on accumulating either when we purify sensations or when we make the sensations more and more unwholesome. So this is all accumulation of the karma. And you have to accumulate some good karma. That's why I have explained to you before, there are 5 stages of the path. First stage is accumulation. You have to have some good accumulation of karma to be able to do correct effort. Tyashin. The second stage is prayoga marga, the stage of correct effort. Correct effort is understanding the suffering of impermanence. That is the heat. Because you understand the suffering of impermanence, you have the heat. Now this suffering of impermanence is based on clinging to what? The object of the clinging of the ego is a body. So the clinging of the self is based in the body. Now, what is the peculiarity of the Yogacara? And it does not in a way contradict so much, not the dependent origination in 24. You have not yet studied Theravada, but there are two ways of studying dependent origination, either by 12 nidanas, 12 yin, and 24 yuan in Theravada. One of these yuan is Purejata Pachaya, the Xian Shen Yuan. First, there has to be an object which is corporeality, materiality. Then there has to be the mind. This is the peculiarity of the Theravada, of the late Theravada, not of the early Theravada, if we can speak in the, because this idea of 24 conditions come in the last book of Abhidharma, which for sure was compiled later. So first there has to be existent object, then there can be existing differentiating mind. This is the idea of Theravada. If you don't have an existing object, then you cannot get a mind differentiating that object. Now, Yogacara has a different idea, which not contradict in a way Theravada. That object, however you look for it, you will not find it. That's why I have given all these materials to understand the corporeality. And Theravada also is saying that these kalapas or atoms, they are distinguished by the mental consciousness. Not I cannot see kalapas, ears cannot hear kalapas. Sati cannot be distinguished by the 5 consciousnesses. It can be only distinguished by the mental consciousness. And when the mental consciousness distinguishes it, it can also break it into constituent parts. This is a peculiarity of Theravada. You find it mentioned in the scriptures of Northern Buddhism, but it is not discussed in detail. It is very much discussed in detail in the Theravada, and you are given the method of detailed breaking of the corporeality constituent parts. Now the Theravada says same like Yogacara, these constituent parts, yatha yatha upajati tatha tatha nirujati. These constituent parts of corporeality, these atoms, they arise and cease in the same place. What we see actually is the differentiation of the mind, like pictures, because you have the mind is working with the velocity which no one can actually measure. With all the modern equipments we have, we cannot still measure the velocity of the mind. We can measure velocity of light, but the mind is much faster than the light. And what the mind does, what the mental consciousness does, is put these pictures together and make it a coherent film. And we live in this coherent film. Whether we're conscious of it or not, this is our work. Now the job of Abhidharma is to make you conscious of it. You are living in your film. And this film is projected by the mental consciousness. And every being is living in a different film. Very wonderful. So sometimes our films are meeting, sometimes our films are very different. Depends on how we have accumulated the pictures and how we put them together. And when there is a picture, there is an attention to it. With that attention comes already the will and accumulation of the will and the past. I have explained before, we may see the same object, but you be interested in a different thing, I be interested in a different thing. And we are belonging to the similar group of beings. Now, we take it for granted that the others also perceive like us, but they perceive in a very different way. Animals, gods, the beings in the hell, all have their firm conviction that they perceive according to the reality of their film. So we see that film and we cry, we laugh. And we desperately cling to the reality of the film. I advise you to go to India, very interesting. And Indian films are well known for being like a drama, Greek drama, everybody wearing kind of a mask. And people follow these masks and clapping and laughing and crying. But it is only a film. And it is only they put on the mask, they put the different cosmetics to look like a very bad person or look like a very good person. All cosmetics can do wonderful thing. So the sutras teach us not only Lankavatara, also in the Agamas you will find the same meaning. Our mind is a great magician which creates the great film, the great drama in which we live. Now it is perfectly all right to be holding to the contents of this drama. But the job of religion is to purify our sensations in regard to this drama we are going through day by day, moment by moment. When our sensations are purified, only then we can detach from the sensations. When the sensations are not purified, we cannot detach from the sensations. And when we detach from the sensation, we can use them for the benefit of others. The Arahat does many, this is great misunderstanding of the, sometimes of the so-called Mahayana Buddhism. The Arahat does many, many good deeds. The Arahat is the blessing of the world. And he does not cling to these good deeds. But he has penetrated the what we experience in the world as it really is, and he has no interest to continue with it. This is quite natural. When we have penetrated the nature of the film we are in, and we want to continue it anymore. This is what Lankavatara Sutra says. We are like actors on the stage. When the mask is penetrated, we then retreat ashamed. But the Bodhisattva won't do it. Why? Because he has a vow not to save just himself, but to save all beings. And here the non-dualistic view comes in. This is Yogacara, this is Madhyamika, this is the Bodhisattva path. When you understand the non-dualistic view, you can keep on purifying your sensations without the wish to go away from this drama, from this film we are living through. And the first step to do that is, in a way very similar what the Theravada, is to analyze the object of our self, object of our clinging, which is corporeality. So this is why I have given you so many materials to understand how the Yogacara tradition breaks the idea of a reality of materiality. And it does it, as opposed to the Theravada, it does it by much more, it does it by rational thinking, by clear, logical understanding. In Theravada, in a way, the same process happens, but through vipassana, direct seeing, rather than rational understanding. And this part of Theravada is very, very precious and very complementary to the Yogacara understanding. But as I say, you may use a different way, but come to a different, because you use a different way, different concepts, you come to a different conclusion. Yogacara uses some different concepts, Theravada uses some different concepts. And Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra clearly teaches the Dharma is based on the concepts, on the words, on the sentences, on the syllables, on the idea of the separate and the common, which on the base of which we create pictures in the mind. On the base of these pictures, then we pay attention wise attention, because these pictures are based on the Tripitaka, which is based on the wise attention. So we have to study the Tripitaka. It is our key for the wise attention, as the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra Tieshan meeting teaches. Without the Tripitaka, we are in darkness. So I have given you the story of the Thailand, this great practitioner. He cries because he is thinking of the grace of the previous teachers, which has made it possible for us to get enlightened. So why not cry? The Arahat can cry, why not? The Bodhisattva can cry, why not? But with a pure sensation, not with clinging. The Arahat can laugh, why not? But with a pure sensation. Arahat can do all kinds of deeds, also to help beings. But the Bodhisattva can do them even better, because he does not want nirvana. So he can kick, he can cry, he can hit, he can even kill for the benefit of others. To purify completely his sensation for the sake of sentient beings. So now we have 1 hour and a half. We have answered some unclarities. I see you need these kind of teachings like a salt, otherwise you only think about your assessment and don't think about learning Buddhism. So I hope this situation will be improved, and if I am here for some purpose, my purpose is to make you interested in your study, not just to get an exam. I will not let anyone fail, but I will try to make those who listen interested. This is my job. Okay, so you will get your questions for the oral examination or for the essays by the beginning of the next month. And I may be leaving Hong Kong by sometimes before the end of next month. But it seems I was told by Kate that it may be even possible to delay your essay if you have many other essays to write, and then I will communicate by computer from the place where I shall be in Europe. Okay, so now 15 minutes break, and then we go quickly through the material so that you can get some knowledge, not just assessment. So with this, let us go into our material. So in today's lesson, we will be concerned with the analysis of corporeality in the Yogacara tradition. That is handout number 7. And I hope you have got the handout number 8. which gives you the analysis of the corporeality and mentality in the Theravada tradition. And we will then analyze it in the next lesson and quickly, so please go through it slowly and carefully so that you can get some good pictures, and we will compare with Yogacara. And then we can go into Vipassana. You have been now introduced into Shamatha, which is the base for Vipassana. You have been introduced to the peculiarities of the northern tradition based on the analysis of the 9 abodes of the mind in Shamatha and the different aspects connected with it. The 6 or 5 thoughts to be removed, the 18 formations which removes them, the different manasikaras, the different attentions which help you to understand the process, the forces, 6 forces which enable you to accomplish this process. Now you have to know, in order to understand Vipassana, you have to know the objects of wisdom. Otherwise, what Vipassana will you practice? So this is why I gave you in the next lesson the perspective of the Yogacara, of the Theravada objects of wisdom, and we will compare, after analyzing the materiality in Yogacara, we will compare with the analysis of mentality in the Yogacara and see how they actually reconcile, and how through understanding our worldly experience we get into the process of enlightenment. This is Buddhism. So no matter how you explain, the steps will be the same. So that is why in the 8th handout I have given you the steps. So in order to understand analysis of the mental process in the Yogacara mind only tradition, it is important to have a clear notion of the analysis of objects in this tradition. All the living traditions teaching the Bodhisattva path in China and Tibet have been directly or indirectly influenced by it. So Yogacara has had a deep influence on all Buddhist traditions. And not only Buddhist traditions, when you learn more about Indian philosophy, you will see actually also on other schools of Indian philosophy. After summarizing some important aspects of this analysis from different sources, we can understand better the Vipassana training of the disciples and bodhisattvas in this tradition, because the Shravaka or disciples' understanding of the reality is same, not different from the understanding of the Bodhisattva. So I emphasize this understanding of the Shravaka, of the disciple, is best to study in some detail. You don't need to study in a very great detail, but you have to, it is best to know it in, at least in some detail, not to be mistaken about the nature of Buddhism. I always never tired of repeating the peculiarity of Buddhism is, otherwise no need to distinguish it from other religions, is the based on the emphasis that the highest reality cannot be an object of clinging, cannot be an object of grasping. If it is an object of grasping, it cannot be the highest reality. This is peculiarity of Buddhism, and this peculiarity of Buddhism is very precious indeed. According to all traditions, a mental process begins by making an object in the mind. We have already explained. If you don't make an object in the mind, the Yogacara question is, can you differentiate between the subject and the object? The Yogacara answer is no. Please try to find yourself if you can say yes. So when you don't name the object, naming is a very subtle process. It does not mean you have to use words to name the object. But when you see something and you already know that it is a sweater, it is a trousers, it is a woman, it is a beautiful woman, then you are already not in your eye consciousness, you are already working with your mental consciousness. Be sure you understand it very clearly. It is same in a way in the Theravada tradition. So all mental process starts with the attention. If there is attention, you connect it to the continuity of mind, be it alaya or be it the Yofenshin, the Bhavanga, and there you already have your tendencies, your seeds, which are then reflected in the way you then investigate the reality and decide about the reality. This is same in Theravada, same in Yogacara. How you investigate the reality, how you decide about the reality, and how you go through it then with either wholesome mind, which is attached to the content of your experience, or which is not attached to the contents of your experience, or unwholesome mind, which is attached to your liking and dislikings, or as a deluded, when the object of liking and disliking is not clear. So this is the nature of the wholesome and unwholesome process. Being deluded about your sensation because you don't understand impermanence and the suffering of impermanence and the selflessness of the suffering of impermanence. Therefore, we cling to our likings, we cling to our dislikings, and we create unwholesome processes of consciousness. The difference between the Bodhisattva path theory and the disciple path theory, I again emphasize the theory, because how we practice depends on what theory, what concept we bring into the practice. According to Yogacara, actually, the Dharma is the concept we make on the base of names and the common and the particular characteristics we give to these names. So now, according to Yogacara, the real understanding of the practice starts when you understand very clearly then the object of the self, that is corporeality, to which we cling most clearly, is actually nothing that can be grasped. That which can be grasped in the corporeality is your concept of the corporeality, not the corporeality itself. This is same in Theravada, same in Yogacara. According to the Agamas, non-enlightened man cannot get disenchanted from the mind. It is not possible because he has been taking the mind as a self since innumerable kalpas. And this habit is deeply rooted in his consciousness. But it is very easy for him to get disenchanted from the materiality because he sees his own body getting old, becoming more and more ugly. So the Vipassana actually starts usually from the analysis of the corporeality, because the corporeality is even for the most unenlightened man or woman will accept that this corporeality will not be very desirable after 20 years, 30 years. If it is not desirable after 20, 30 years, then he will accept that it must be changing not only years by years, but even months by months. When it is changing months by months, he must accept that it is also changing weeks by weeks, days by days, moment by moment. So this is easy to accept even for the most unenlightened man, that eventually this body will not be desirable. Because it will not be desirable, it is not very intelligent to be so much attached to it now. So the Vipassana starts with the analysis of the corporeality. Same in Theravada, same in Yogacara, same in all Buddhist traditions. This is also rooted in the Agamas. So now, how does the Yogacara analyze the corporeality? It explains the corporeality not in such a detail like Theravada, but it shows very clearly by rational thinking that this corporeality, to believe it to be something that can be grasped, is against the reason. And so I have chosen different aspects for you how this is explained. So a very wonderful explanation you will find in Lankavatara Sutra. I have not developed here, and it is a base for our analysis. Atoms cannot retain atomic qualities when divided. This is similar to what science says nowadays. Actually, when you divide the materiality, you will never come to an end. You will find always smaller particles until materiality comes to nothing. Now, Lankavatara also says, Rulankati also says, since materiality is composed of many different elements which are completely contradictory, like a water element, fire element, how can they be together? The answer of Lankavatara, because they are empty from the very beginning. Empty of what? Empty of self-existence. Now, Abhidharma Samuchaya, in the especially the commentary of Stiramati, who is the master of Yogacara Abhidharma. So Rupa has three meanings: obstacle, manifestation of location, and alternation by touch. When you analyze this, then you will find that nothing of these can actually hold to make materiality something which really exists. Because all this is nothing but a process of change in which you don't find any core whatsoever. So according to the Mahayana, this is not only Yogacara, the Buddha taught the existence of 10 material bases. That means the eye and the color until the body and the touchable. How do you say? The body and the tangible. Body and the tangible. Body, eye and the colors, ear and the sound, body and the tangible. So these are the 10 material bases on which our experience of the world is based. So the Buddha has taught these material bases only to break the notion of real existing self and to break the clinging to the phenomena. This is very important. So they do not really exist. They are only means to understand that there is the object of the self does not really exist. And the self, as we all know, is the synonym for clinging. Because we cling, we have the self. The great elements produce two types of materiality: the tactile materiality and the derived materiality. So you can study later in Vasubandhu and in some other scriptures. You have the differentiation between the tactile and the four and the elements. According to the normally the elements are the tactile. In the peculiarity of Theravada, which is based on the meditation on the four elements, which is best preserved in Theravada, actually water also belongs to the Pachu, to the Dharma Ayatana. This is also peculiarity of Theravada, not in the northern tradition. So it shows that as opposed to the northern tradition, the meditation on the materiality is deeply rooted in the Theravada tradition and is very precious. So this is the essence of Yogacara. The material, so-called material phenomena are not produced by atoms, but by seeds in the store consciousness. So when we have explained that before, what you see by the eye consciousness is a direct seeing based on the alaya, where the seeds are stored. That's why alaya is called the store consciousness. Bija here signifies activity. Where there is bija, there is xinxiang. You cannot have a xinxiang without the bija. Very important to understand. The xinxiang is, we can translate as activity for a lack of a better word in English. So the activity of the mind is directly linked to the seeds in our consciousness. Now the Buddha, as opposed to us, does not need any activities. He is just reflecting things as they are in a samadhi. There are 15 kinds of rupa. The 4 great elements, 5 sensitivities, 5 objects, and rupa belonging to the Dharma ayatana. It is of 5 kinds. Here you have some difference with the Theravada, which is also significant. So atoms, conglomeration of atoms, rupa inducing sensation. What is rupa inducing sensation? It is explained. It is the kaya vigyapti and the vachi vigyapti. Kaya vigyapti, whenever you move your body, it is a manifestation of the consciousness, manifestation of the consciousness through body. When you speak, it is a manifestation of consciousness through the mouth. So these are called the rupa inducing sensation. And avigyapti rupa. This you don't have in Theravada. This is peculiarity of the Sarvastivada. And also taken over by Yogacara, but it is explained as being the tya, the false. What is avigyapti rupa? Avigyapti rupa is, for example, when you have prapti ta of the sila, you have taken the silas, so it remains in your mind, but it is not manifested. So that is why it's called Wu Piao. Then mental image, which is the construction of your mind. This is what we have to be conscious in meditation. Then you will not imagine bodhisattvas. You will only see, you visualize a bodhisattva in order to purify your sensation, not in order to imagine something. And you do it with the complete understanding that it is just an image, nothing else. And that image is a pure creation of your mind, nothing to grasp at. And then rupa produced by samadhi. When you become enlightened, you can produce rupa in your samadhi. Arahat or Buddha, you can change the materiality. he can become many. From one becomes many. According to this tradition, all the Dharma Ayatana Rupas, they are unreal. This is also different from Theravada, from other traditions. Why they are unreal? Because they are the production of from the bijas. And they are the constructions of the mental consciousness, and they are only seen by the mental consciousness. And mental consciousness is already based on the non-existing self, as long as we are not Buddhas. I mean, even disciple Buddha has this understanding. Not only, you don't need to become a perfectly enlightened Buddha to know this very clearly. Only the four elements and the Indriyas and Gochara Rupas. Indriya means can, Gochara means Chen. Can Chen. Can, Yen means five sensitivities, sensitivity of Jinsi. What means can? Means Jinsi, the sensitivity. Why do we see? Because we have the sensitivity of the eye. The sensitivity of the eye is only small part of the eye. It is very tiny. The rest of the eye is only helping this small part of the eye to see. Similarly, ear, tongue, nose. The difference is that the sensitivity of the body faculty is spread everywhere. But the other sensitivities, they are concentrated in tiny places in the organs. And they, of course, produced by karma, by our desire, because of our desire to see. We have the eyes in this life. Desire to hear, we have the ears in this life. Desire to touch, we have the body in this life. And this desire is deeply rooted in our consciousness. That when you meditate, you will see how deep it is. And Gochara means Jinjian. The color is the Gochara Rupa of the eye. Gochara literally means where the cow finds pasture. The cow of the eye finds pasture in the colors. The cow of the ear found pasture in the sounds. And the cow of the eye is dependent on the pasture of the color. Without that pasture, it cannot have any function. So it's very important to understand the dependent origination. The Cheng Wei Shirun exactly explained the 9 causes of the eye, the 8 causes of the ear, and so on. You can please study more in detail. And the same is explained in the Theravada tradition in a slightly different way. So this all is dependent origination. In the Theravada tradition, all the materiality or corporeality and mentality is explained in terms of 4 aspects to make you clearly understand that all this is just dependent. The aspect of the lakhana, of the characteristic, the aspect of the way of the function, the aspect of manifestation, and the aspect of the primary cause. There are always many, many causes. We can only speak about the primary cause. Now, as you may know, in the northern tradition of Buddhism, there is a big discussion between the Sarvastivada, Sautrantika, about the rupa, about the mentality, which aspects of rupa, which aspect of mentality is real, which is not real. So there are big differences. According to some, what we can see is only the Sangata, the conglomeration of the atoms. According to others, it is the atom. According to some, the atoms cannot be analyzed. They are not analyzable. According to others, they can be analyzed in the form of Sangata, and so on and so on. Later you can study. Now we don't go into details, but I may mention it in turn when we speak about the Vipassana meditation, analyzing the Rupa. So, as you should already know, according to the Yogacara, all the dharmas taught by the Buddha, they are only taught with a purpose to bring you to the understanding that the self is only clinging. Without the clinging, no need for self. And when we have no need for self, we have no need for anything. No need for dharma, no need for non-dharma. So we are really free. Because we have self, we are not free. So we are in bondage. Who has bound us? We ourselves bound us. How did we bind ourselves? By clinging to the objects of our experience. This is what we do all the time. When we meditate, we start to be conscious of it. When we don't meditate, we do it, but we are not even conscious of it. So all the dharmas that the Buddha is teaching, according to Yogacara, he teaches only to lead us to let go the clinging to the self. The teaching of the disciples analyzes the dharmas, clinging to the dharmas only on sight. The main clinging is clinging to persons, and the dharmas are taught to break the clinging to persons. But as you should know, the Mahayana tradition emphasizes not clinging to all the elements of our experience, to the dharmas. So all the different divisions of the rupa in terms of ayatanas, of dhatus, was taught by Buddha in order to abandon the clinging to a non-changing self. In the formations. So all we experience with our worldly differentiating consciousness are the formations, Xing. Now, because we have clinging to them, we believe in the self. When we have no such clinging, we don't need to see any self anywhere, because it is nowhere to be found. So all the teachings of Buddha are not taught to grasp them, but they are taught to let go. This is also in the agamas, same. Only the emphasis is different. Here the emphasis is on the emptiness of the all elements of our experience. But same you will find in the agamas, only with the emphasis on the existence of these elements as the means to break the existence of the self-existing personality. So, in other words, all these divisions that we find in Buddhism are taught to break the clinging to the self, nothing else. The aggregates, the ayatana, the dhatus were taught by Buddha as being real objects of purification in order to abandon clinging to self. So they are just skillful means, but they have no real existence whatsoever. A real existence in Indian philosophy is something that does not change. When these objects become free from the outflow of impurities, they are real in the highest sense. They become suchness. So because we are clinging, we don't understand suchness. And the suchness is, of course, a synonym of nirvana. But what nirvana? The non-dualistic nirvana. In this non-dualistic nirvana, when we understand the non-dualistic nirvana, we attain the state of the supremely realized Buddha. So what is the meaning of suchness in the agamas? I have already explained to you. The suchness is presented as sadrisha. Everything we experience in the world is not that, but it is like that. On all this, the whole of Mahayana philosophy is based. So it does not mean it is a negation of the meaning of the agamas. It is the further analysis of the material you find in agamas themselves. So it does not mean we should not study the agamas. We should study them with the different understanding, bringing us to the clear ideas that all the dharmas are just skillful means. All that Buddha can teach and all the true religious man can teach is just the concepts. And these concepts are not the reality. They are just parables to understand the reality. The enlightened man can only teach in parables, in bringing the similarities. All phenomena exist in the conventional reality only, in Sambhati. The non-self nature of all objects is suchness. So we come back to the idea I have explained to you according to Yogacara. This dualistic world that we see, it exists as opposed to the Madhyamika. It exists, but not as we see it. It exists without duality. And in this very duality, when we understand it, there is this emptiness. And this duality comes from the mind. Which mind? The alaya. So our own mind creates like a drama, like a film, the illusion of existence and non-existence. Neither existence nor non-existence is a fact, because of dependent origination, which does not allow any real existence or any real non-existence. The distinction between the object and subject was taught, so all the distinctions, simply said, are only skillful means, nothing else. But these distinctions are indispensable. Without distinctions, we cannot analyze the world. But the difference between us as the Agamas teach and the Buddha is that the Buddha is using these distinctions without clinging, but we are using these distinctions with clinging. This is a difference between us and the Buddha. Now, as opposed to the Shravaka path, in the Bodhisattva path, from the very beginning, you contemplate from the effect to the cause. The non-distinctions is real, but the non-distinctions is still with distinctions. Because if you have non-distinctions, it is no Dharma. If you cling to distinctions, it's also no Dharma. This is Buddhism. So as soon as you start clinging, you are out, so to say, of the clear seeing. So the clear seeing must be learned step by step. If it is admitted that the mind is momentary, all Buddhists believe that, and it is our experience, we cannot doubt about that. The rupa must be momentary also, because the mind is a base. So this is negation of the Theravada understanding. According to Theravada, the duration of the object of the self must be much slower than the duration of the subject of the self, which is the mind and mentality, sensations, perceptions, will, and differentiation. So Yogacara is very much connected with the Sarvastivada, with the Sautrantika, which also believes that the duration of the mind and duration of the corporeality must be same. When the mind is momentary, that which it perceives must also be momentary, but not in Theravada. It is momentary, but its momentariness has a different duration. This is peculiarity of the explanation of dependent origination in Theravada. We will speak about it in the coming lesson, so that you be more and more clear how we analyze our experience depend on how we put the constituent parts of our experience, the corporeality and mentality, into the mind. And we put them into the mind with the help of the concepts. If we don't have the concept, what can we put into the mind? You should understand this very clearly and not to be mistaken. The Rupa objects are composed of atoms, but atoms are without substance. The objects of knowledge are experienced without differentiation by the 5 kinds of sensual consciousness, with differentiation by mental consciousness. This is the main emphasis. So don't be mistaken. You see with eye consciousness, you see an apple. Eye consciousness does not know an apple. You are living in your concept. The concept is your world, and the concepts are created by your karma. And karma is our subjectivity. And the subjectivity is stored in our mind. Please don't be mistaken about it. When one sees color with a distinction, it is the object of mental consciousness. The color originally experienced has vanished already. So the car you cling to, the money you cling to, the woman you cling to, the man you cling to, the child you cling to, the woman, the wife you cling to, the mother you cling to, the father you cling to. All this is the concept in your mind. It does not mean that it is not true. It is very true. But you have to know that it is only a concept. So now for understanding the non-reality of the corporeality, very important is the teachings of the logicians. Dignaga, Dharmakirti, they have the great contribution for the understanding of Buddhism. In Indian philosophy, the logic is playing a very, very important role. And now these logicians, inspired by the Yogacara teachings, they make the very intricate logic of understanding the non-reality of the objects of the self. When the Suoyen Lun, when the mental consciousness arises, the objects of the five consciousnesses disappears. It takes only a mental image as an object. We have talked about it before when we talked about the 4 objects, 16 objects of meditation according to the Shravaka Bhumi of Yogacara Bhumi Shastra. The 4 objects being the Vyapya, Alambana, the Tien Man, Soyen. As long as you are not enlightened, all objects of your meditations are only concepts. You don't know anything except the concept. When you become enlightened, then you see the limit of your reality, the 5 aggregates, 12 ayatanas, 18 dhatus, and you see them in terms of the suchness. As long as you are not enlightened, you only see them as in terms of your concepts. Be it the concept of emptiness or be it the concept of real 18 bases, 12 spheres of perception, of 22 faculties. All these are concepts. But these concepts, they are very useful. So you have to distinguish between the useful concept and non-useful concept. Non-useful concepts bring you to bondage and suffering. Useful concepts bring you to letting go. So what is the study of the Buddhists? To bring the useful concepts into the mind and purify your sensation so that you create a Pureland in your mind. When the mental consciousness arises, the object, okay. So it should be very clear. If the mental consciousness can experience the objects directly, the deaf can hear, and so on. So now, very important thing, what I wanted to make you attentive, but unfortunately we don't have enough base for studying it. According to Yogacara, when you can smell directly with the mind, you can see directly with the eyes. So it is a proof of mind only. But actually you can do it. If you meditate on the 4 elements according to Theravada, you can smell, you can see the color of your lungs, of your heart, of your kidneys. You can smell it, and you can see it, smell it, taste it directly with your mind if your concentration is strong. You don't need to go through the eye. But you first start to seeing it through the sensitivity of the eye. But when the concentration improves, you will see it, smell it, taste it. You can taste your liver, taste your lung. No problem. All this can Vipassana do with a strong concentration. You can taste, you can smell, very bad smell. All the bodily parts you can directly smell, directly taste. And if your concentration is good, you don't need to go through the nose. So, strangely enough, in theory, in Yogacara, but in practice, you actually make this experience through Theravada meditation, which in a theory still accept the real existence of the object of corporeality. So that is why it's so interesting to study different perspectives, because our reality depends how we make the object in the mind. And when we make the object in the mind, we are already programmed by our seeds in the consciousness. So this is the very interesting part of the Yogacara, and you should work on it to experience it by yourself if it is really so, or if the Maitreya has just been dreaming. So there are no atoms outside consciousness. So question arises, if there are no atoms, the 5 consciousnesses have no objects. Answer, beings believe in mind, in body, so they see forms outside. This is what Lankavatara says also, precisely that. We see objects outside because we cling. If we have no clinging, there is absolutely no reason at all to see the objects outside of the mind. Question. In that case, corporeality and mentality appear together, so how can it become an object? Answer. The activities of the 5 consciousnesses perfume the alaya, which produces function similar to their fruits. So this is very important. You will find in the Agamas a similar idea. The suchness is the similarity. We see similarity to the object, but it is not that. But we grasp because we believe it is that. This is very deep, and one has to contemplate on it. The 5 sensitivities can only be deduced. In fact, they present the objective aspect of the alaya. You have already learned about the objective aspect and the active consciousness and the self-witnessing consciousness. Now we will talk more about the Tasheng Pai Fa in our next, when we come to the analysis of materiality and of corporeality and mentality in Theravada. We will compare with Yogacara because we don't have time to compare in detail. We will do it as briefly as possible so that you get the main idea. The 5 faculties are of 2 kinds. Existing in highest reality, the function of alaya, which gives rise to 7 kinds of consciousnesses, and the alaya objective aspect, image. The atoms cannot be a cause of 5 kinds of sensual consciousnesses. They are only reflections of the mental consciousness, just like a dream. The hardness in color is not the object of eye consciousness, similar with atoms. The hardness exists. It is a dominant cause of eye consciousness, not its objective cause. In order that anything appears according to Buddhism, Northern Buddhism, you have to have the objective cause, so yuan yuan. You have the preceding cause, wu tian yuan. According to Yogacara, wu tian yuan is the manas. You have to have adipati pratyaya zengshan yuan, which is the faculty. And you have to have the hetu pratyaya yin yuan, which is a bija, the seat in the consciousness. So this is how, due to these 4 conditions, anything can happen. So no matter what experience, you can trace these 4 conditions must be there. If they are not there, nothing can happen. So neither atom can be object of our direct experience. It is only object of mental consciousness, nor the conglomeration of atoms. Some philosophers believe we can't see the atoms, but we can see the conglomeration of atoms. The Sautrantika Kimpu. Nor can conglomeration of atoms be cause. They are just like second moon, which can not produce another moon. Non-existing cannot produce a non-existing entity. The atom's conglomerate is not seen in objects like pots, etc. If atoms conglomerate, the pots must be different from the conglomeration of atoms. So if they really exist, they must be separated from the pot, but they cannot be separated from the pot. The diversity of atoms is not real. The difference, this we will speak, this is the greatness of Theravada. Even so, finally, it is all mental consciousness, which is in this tradition the great cheater, the great theater in which we live. Yet, it is very useful. Without that, we cannot meditate. Without that, we cannot realize. Without that, nothing can be really witnessed. However delusive it is all we have to get bondage or to get realization. In other words, the inner witnessing consciousness, we have learned about that, transforms into the subjective and objective parts of consciousness directed outside, experienced by the mental six consciousnesses. We have talked about it all and already. No substance can become a base for consciousness. However hard you try, you will not find any substance, lasting substance, as an object of consciousness. Such a thing cannot be found. Beings believe in mind, in body, so they also see the corporeality as outside. That we have said. Objects like reflections in the mirror, the phenomena appearing to the five kinds of consciousnesses perfume the alaya, which again produces effects. The five faculties cannot be established by direct experience, but are established by deduction only. So all that we establish through the mental consciousness, except in samadhi, which is according to Indian tradition, the valid means of knowledge, is actually by deduction. Only the five sensual consciousnesses have access directly to the object. We have already explained that. It should be clear. If atoms exist, the consciousness must have divisions in space. Or that has division exists in the relative truth only. 11 kinds of rupa are the nimitta bhaga, xiangfen of the alaya consciousness, are the objective aspect. All objects of experience are just transformation of consciousness in the form of objective aspect. The near causes are the seeds in consciousness. They are the yin yuan, the hetu pratyaya. The intermediate cause, wu tian yuan, is the previous aspect of appearance. The objective cause is the objective aspect of the transformed consciousness. So the faculties and their objects. The dominant cause, the faculties, are the faculties and the consciousness with its material factors. So now we come to the most famous work. You know that the brother of Asanga, Vasubandhu, he is the most important systematizer of the Yogacara, and the most influential are his two works. Of course, not talking about Jishalun, the very short works, but very influential. Vaishya, Sanshya, Sung, 30 verses of Vaishya and 20 verses. 20 verses, it is very readable, very wonderful, because he was a great poet also. This is the greatness of Indian philosophy. The great philosophers, they all write in verses. Maitreya, Asanga, Vasubandhu, Nagarjuna, and so on. They were the great poets. Great philosophers were the great poets. The great religious personalities, all are poets. Because we can only speak in parables, we cannot explain directly, impossible. So in a beautiful parables, in beautiful language, Vasubandhu explained the impossibility to get at anything tangible that we can grasp in the corporeality, in the body. And he uses wonderful logic. If the outer object exists, as most of us believe, it must be unique or diverse, both or not possible. So we can only use the four alternatives to grasp reality, but none of these alternatives work. So reality is ungraspable. This is Mahayana. Same for Nagarjuna, same for Maitreya. All we can grasp is in terms of four realities. Neither four possibilities. Neither of these possibilities can be accepted. So the reality is unthinkable. So like this, very easy to establish the logical impossibility of the existence of the body, of the Rupa. The 10 material bases were taught by the Buddha in order to refute the idea of Atman, not to establish the existence of outer objects. They are the transformations of consciousness. There is no real Dharma with Rupa characteristics. The Rupa characteristics were taught to enter the domain of selfless phenomena. This is the Mahayana. The holding to the true existence of phenomena is based on the dichotomy between existence and non-existence. The Rupa phenomena appear stable only due to the perfumations, the vasanas in the alaya consciousness. So what makes stability in our perception is not the reality, but it is the perfumations of consciousness through the previous clinging. This is very important to understand. There is nothing stable in materiality. So even in the deepest depths of the ocean, you will find a fragment of a millimeter of stability. Nothing like that exists. So now it's already, time is over. So please go through it carefully so that we come next. I repeat the same things with different perspectives, so you can see it's not quite the same, but it explains the same thing. But it's never the same. This is a wonderful thing of Buddhism. So Buddha brings us again and again and again and again to the same thing by skillful means of seeing it from different perspectives. So please study carefully this chapter on the materiality. And the next step will be to analyze the mental process in Theravada, so understanding materiality and corporate non-materiality. And then we compare it with the Yogacara and come to the Vipassana itself. First, you have to know the objects of Vipassana, then we can talk about Vipassana. That's why we have chosen this process. Okay, so now let us transfer merit for the benefit of all sentient beings so that we all find the peace in our hearts. 愿以此功德普及一切，我等一众生皆空成佛道。So please try to do some reading. I will give you the essence of the materials you need, but you should try to absorb them, not just to get some assessment, but so that you develop some interest in the living Buddhism, not the dead Buddhism.